Zain, thank you so much for being with us on Dastaangoi Podcast. I'd love to kind of start off with a little brief history about you, how you come to be, and then how Rastah started, and then we'll just talk a little bit about fashion and narratives about Pakistan and how you guys are doing what you guys are doing to kind of change that Pakistani traditional streetwear narrative.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. I'm a big fan of what you do. Yeah, just a bit about me. I do not have a traditional fashion background. And I remember graduating from university, I want to say 2019, and I really did not know what I wanted to do, but I knew that it was something related to expressing my creative side and tying in what, I had learned in Pakistan and
Yeah.
what that means to me with something creative. And me and my cousin Ismail, we decided to start this random idea for a brand, Rasta Wear. The name was first Rasta Wear. don't, don't judge me on that. But yeah, we just released 2 hoodies and 2 designs. I didn't know anything about fashion, but what I did sort of realize was that the idea started to catch on because something like this wasn't really being done out of Pakistan. The idea of, proudly wearing your culture and your heritage, on your sleeve wasn't something that was being done. And then that led to me wanting to explore more of my own country. And I found it very funny that I had grown up in Pakistan predominantly, and I didn't know that much about my own country because of the fact that, we're sort of taught to be apologetic when it comes to
Yeah.
be Pakistani.
Yeah.
And that's something that's ingrained in us. And it was a lot of unlearning for me. So came back to Pakistan after graduating from UBC, did the 2 designs, 2 hoodies, and then just sort of dove into fashion. Wanted to make this into like a contemporary or a luxury brand, which incorporated Pakistan's heritage and artisanship. That's the big thing, because we have so much when it comes to offering the world in terms of, artisanship and
Yeah.
heritage. And that's where our second collection came out, and things just started to really move forward. And people were like, oh, wow, this sort of stuff happened in Pakistan. And then again, the press, some celebrities, and now here we are.
At volume 4.
Yeah, we're at volume 4 now.
Yeah.
Just got done with volume 4, yeah.
It's brilliant to see. And it's also, for me, what's really interesting is when you usually look at handicrafts or the people, the makers of Pakistan, Southeast
Uh-huh.
Asia, India, mein dekh lo, Pakistan, mein dekh lo, people usually tend to discount them, that it's very difficult to get to. And there's always this misunderstanding where most people will
Mm-hmm.
not want to get there or be like, oh, okay, this is like, ye Sialkot mein bana hua hai, so it's not good quality. Like this is block printing, so it comes from like a lower background. I'd much rather buy something else that's done on a machine or whatever, because the narrative that people are able to spin outside in the West is that this is more valuable, although it's being done in China, mass produced in a factory with like thousands of
Exactly.
pieces coming out per second. But
Mm-hmm.
I think what handicraft people and what makers struggle with is marketing themselves, is showcasing their
Mm-hmm.
value, and is telling their
Yeah.
story, because their story is like thousands of years old, and the care and the authenticity that goes with the work that they do. And you guys do it very
Yeah.
brilliantly, because you're not just leveraging that story, you're giving the spotlight to the makers, like the video series.
Yeah.
Well, it's very beautifully put together, and it showcases these beautiful block printers that are doing the work, and you do it in a way which makes people in our generation understand. Because what
Yeah.
also happens is there's a disconnect between the makers and our generation, because in our parents' generation, they understand कि गोटी का काम क्या होता है, they understand कि block printing क्या होती है, कहाँ पे होती है, and how valuable that
Uh-huh.
is. But our
Yeah.
generation, the 20s, 30s, we haven't really grown up with that. A lot of us have been, looking at social media and other things, and we've been looking outside
Yeah.
for inspiration. And the
Mm-hmm.
beauty of what you're doing is it's really kind of taking contemporary Western clothing, but still keeping the roots and building that narrative around, which brings an understanding of Pakistan, but also does it in a way which people are more used to nowadays, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think one of the things that's very important to look at is that Pakistan के अंदर जो कारीगर है ना वो आज के दौर में शौक से नहीं बनता, मजबूरी से बनता है.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is कि आप ब्लॉक प्रिंटिंग इसलिए नहीं शुरू करते कि भाई मुझे ब्लॉक प्रिंटिंग का शौक है और मुझे आर्टिस्ट बनना है और इस तरह उस तरह. आप मजबूरी से करते हो, आपने अपनी जेब के अंदर 2 आने डालना है. तो इस चीज को जब तक कोई समझेगा नहीं, वो ये नहीं रियलाइज कर सकेगा कि ये जितने भी हमारे कारीगर और आर्टिजन्स हैं, इनके पास रूम फॉर एक्सपेरिमेंटेशन या रूम फॉर बीइंग क्रिएटिविटी जो होती है ना, वो इनके पास है ही नहीं, बिकॉज दे डोंट हैव दैट लेवरेजिंग पावर. Once you give anybody who has that kida of being an artist, that blank canvas to do what you want to do, magic starts to happen. And we
100%.
really need to understand the history behind all of this as well. For the past 30-40 years or so, इतनी पुरानी ये बात चलती आ रही है कि आर्टिसनशिप जो है ना वो पाकिस्तान में डिक्लाइन करती जा रही है. हमारे जो पार्टनर आर्टिसान है, ब्लॉक प्रिंटर असलम साहब, he has been block printing for about 40-50 years. और वो यही कहते हैं कि पिछले 20-25 साल से ना ये चीज बिल्कुल ही कम होती जा रही है. अब मैं मजबूरी से करता हूँ, शौक से नहीं करता. और इसकी वजह ये कि हम उनकी भी क्रेडिट नहीं देते.
100%. और उनकी भी I'm sure कि उनके भी like बाप दादा से आ रही होगी उनकी फैमिली में.
Yeah, exactly. He's been in that family for so long. वो तो यही कहता है ना कि भाई मैं तो सिर्फ अब इसलिए कर रहा हूँ क्योंकि I only know this.
Yeah.
But frankly, when I met him, he said that I do not want to block print. This is what an artisan said. An artist, can you imagine a writer or a filmmaker saying that, "Bhai, maine nahi karna, maaf kar do."
Yeah.
Because it doesn't pay well. It literally does not pay well, and there's no room for experimentation. There's no room for an artisan being allowed to be an artist. Artisan or artist mein bahut farak hai. Artisan is someone who has that skill and is being guided to do this. If you look at Rastah's work, what you'll realize is that whatever artisanal technique that we're working with, we're doing it in a very unique sort of way. Our block printing isn't like traditional Mughal or Pakistani block printing where you have these borders or uske andar topic images. It's very dystopian, it's very spread out, and it's sort of just breaking the rules. And we have to allow these artisans to do that. Even when I was making this collection around the relationship of truck art and truck drivers, what I realized was that after doing a lot of research was that a lot of these truck artists, they don't experiment. If you've been to Pakistan, right?
Yeah.
If you look at a Pakistani truck that's painted, you'll realize that the general motifs are the same.
The same. Yeah.
Why is that? It's because वहां से उठाया, पेंट किया, दिहाड़ी आई, बस. इस माइंडसेट को हमें चेंज करना पड़ेगा. इस माइंडसेट को चेंज करना पड़ेगा कि we can be more than this. We have the tools and we have the skills and we have the people जिनके अंदर वो कीड़ा है आर्टिस्ट बनने का. लेकिन उनको चांस देना पड़ेगा.
It's so true, and it's incredible that you say these things. क्योंकि यही चीजें मैं like I see this in the tech industry as well. We're very good at doing, but we like getting the idea and like taking a step back from that daily wage thing. I mean, obviously, आपकी economy बढ़ेगी, लोगों के पास पैसे आएंगे ज़्यादा, and they're going to be able to experiment. But I see that as well. Like we're great at service businesses. We're not great at being entrepreneurs that are visionary, that are making new things, right?
Exactly.
And so how do you do that? And it's so beautifully put by you कि जब आपकी वो दिहाड़ी वाली mentality चली जाती है, वो apology like that apologetic kind of mentality goes away, and you start to take and understand the beauty in the art that you're doing, and people start to value you for who you are and what you're doing, then actual beauty starts to come out.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it has to do with years and years of trauma कि भाई जेब के अंदर पैसे जाएंगे कि नहीं.
Yeah.
The first thing I do when I meet any artisan is that भाई पैसों की टेंशन मत लो. पैसे आपको इधर से बहुत आएंगे. ज़्यादा आएंगे जो आप इधर locally बना रहे हो, और आते भी हैं. We give them a lot more than what they would make locally.
Yeah.
जब वो रोटी की टेंशन खत्म हो जाती है ना इंसान के अंदर, then sort of magic does start to happen, because we have this basic instinct. We live in a freaking capitalistic society where we need to sort of, earn a bare minimum. When you take away that stress, when you sort of shelf that trauma with your team, and you sort of give them the permission to make mistakes and to just be, to express, then really magic starts to happen in a very collaborative environment. Imagine a hand weaver and a block printer and a designer and a freaking production manager sitting on the same table, just
Yeah.
hashing out ideas without thinking कि यार ये चीज बिकेगी कि नहीं. उस
Uh,
वक्त जो है ना फिर एक बड़ी interesting चीज होती है.
That's amazing to hear what you're doing here. Like it's honestly, it's incredible to see that,
Yeah.
and it shows in the work as well, like the level of detail, the way you guys go about it, the way you guys look at your campaigns. It's actually stunning. If we take a shift into the consumer side of things and look at
Mm-hmm.
street culture in Pakistan. I mean,
Yeah.
I am not very aware of what's going on because I've just been outside of Pakistan for so long. And as I'm meeting
Mm-hmm.
people, I'm starting to understand the film economy. I'm understanding short films. I'm understanding the artists and everything like that. So I'd love to kind of get an understanding from you. How has the street culture in Pakistan developed? And what has it developed around? Like, sometimes it's hip hop, sometimes it's basketball, sometimes it's biking. Like there's different kinds and there's different niches, right? Like
Yeah.
how does Pakistan fit into this? And what are some of the things that are, for instance, very prevalent in Lahore to Karachi or to Islamabad? Like, do you see these kinds of narratives coming out?
So what I have noticed is that ever since Rastah started to gain this traction, there has been an immense amount of leveraging that has tried to go on to enter the streetwear space without essentially understanding what streetwear is. You and I can start a brand tomorrow with t-shirts and hoodies and say, oh, it's selling streetwear. Yes, that's not streetwear, right? But it's happening. Roz mujhe naya ad aa raha hota hai of, streetwear brand, stylish and stuff like that. So there's going to be an oversurge of supply of like
Yeah.
streetwear, and what's going to happen is that these brands are going to start to compete on price.
And that's
So
already
वो 1500
happening.
की
क्योंकि
बेच रहे
पाकिस्तान में
exactly.
एक ये भी मसला है ना कि चाइना से बहुत माल आता है. And a lot of the stuff
Exactly.
comes from China, and it's very easy to do, and it gets dumped into Pakistan, and then you put in $5 भी नहीं, $10 की आप ad डालते Facebook पे, and you get everyone, right?
बिल्कुल. आप 1500 की टी-शर्ट बेच रहे हो, साथ वाला बोलेगा अच्छा 1400, 1300, 1200. And what's going to happen is that most of these brands are going to die because they're not going to have the capital to sustain those low costs to maintain that sale price. And then the brands with the narrative who are actually streetwear are going to stay alive. I haven't seen many of them. If I'm being very honest, there was one brand out of Karachi, Hef Clothing, which I wouldn't say it was like a contemporary or luxury streetwear brand, but the essence of it was, Karachi street culture.
Yeah.
I don't know if it exists anymore, but the essence of why that brand started was something to do with what Karachi is about, what different subcultures are about. So any advice that I would give to anybody trying to start a streetwear brand in Pakistan is nail down a subculture, nail down a narrative, nail down what's going on in your country or your city, even galiyon mein. Even barbershops mein jo ye side pe hoti hain, if you want to start a streetwear brand around barbershops, do it. Fine, you won't make that much money, or you might even, like Supreme did. Supreme wasn't set out to make a shit ton of money. It was something that I like to call like a niche spillover, where you sort of dominate this subculture and then everybody else is like, oh, I want to be like them. And then the masses start to buy. So Pakistan mein streetwear culture aa raha hai, but all for the wrong reasons. And it's sort of, it's catastrophic and scary if I'm being very honest.
Yeah, एक और चीज भी मैंने notice करी है, like, because in Pakistan there aren't, or at least, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, there haven't been that many Western clothing brands, right? Pakistan is still, I mean, retail is growing at one of the fastest pace around the world in Pakistan right now. 8% annual growth rate, which is ridiculous in terms of retail, offline retail. Pakistan mein e-commerce, offline. Online is like less than a percentage of total retail in Pakistan right now. But if you look at the way fashion brands have evolved, like we have these big generations, we have these big Khadis, we have these sapphires. So women's clothing has been very big and very prominent, like unstitched. And also Pakistan is a market of tailoring, right? Like sab log apne khud ke kapde banate hain always and have been for the longest time. There haven't been that many prevalent brands to come out, especially prevalent brands in Western clothing. Now you have Republic Umar Farouk, you have HSY. Outfitters. Is Urban Outfitters or is it just
it's just Outfitters Pakistan. It's like a fast fashion brand out of Pakistan. They're actually doing well in terms of their bottom line, from what I've
Okay.
heard.
I did not know,
Yeah,
but
they
I've heard
dumped
of it.
clothes out.
I thought it was part of Urban Outfitters, but I had a feeling that it probably wasn't. But there have like this is a very recent kind of undertaking. Not like there haven't been that many brands to begin with. So how and also Pakistan is one of the markets where majority of the people, like a lot of the people, still do wear shalwar kameez. Like shalwar kameez is a very prominent thing. And then one thing when we started talking, you also mentioned, which was कि लोग अपने सीने पे कुछ पहन नहीं सकते, which I kind of agree and disagree with, not in the Western sense, but in the Eastern sense.
Yeah.
Like traditional sense, में आप अभी भी अजरक पहनते हो, अभी भी shawl पहनते हो, like you still have that kind of thing, right? But
Yeah.
in a Western sense, we haven't created our own perspective of what Western clothing in a Pakistani context looks like. And I think
Yeah.
you're doing that in a niche, but I'd be curious as to what you think, why that hasn't happened in a more public scale, in a more
In
mass scale.
Pakistan,
In Pakistan.
just in Pakistan.
Yeah.
Okay, the main reason is because we're priced at a contemporary price point on considering like global standards. So if we're selling a $90 t-shirt in Pakistan, people are not going to buy a $90 t-shirt. Now they're starting to do that. Like our customer base in Pakistan, I think almost tripled for volume 4. So it's slowly increasing, which is very good. We might even start like a offshoot, very minimalist sort of brand for Pakistan, just so that we can accommodate for that lack of a receptive price point with the main Rastah line. And I'm very confident that if I do it the right way, I can capture that market. Just because what my strength is just tying in different narratives together and making people sort of feel like they're part of the story. And I think that it's something that isn't that hard to do. There are brands that are making Western clothing, and now they're capturing that Pakistani market on like a much bigger scale. There's Sapphire West, there's Almas, you have these people who are doing these things, but what they're lacking is that sort of very strong overarching narrative that we have to be a part of this. It's still a product.
Yeah.
There's not many people in Pakistan who are tying in a narrative to the product. Zara Shah Jahan is one.
Yeah.
People really buy into the brand. Yeah. Umar Farouk is one. I don't know if he still is that good at it, but there was a time where people were really buying into the brand. So we might, start doing something locally for Pakistan in terms of streetwear, because ये भी तो सोचो ना कि पाकिस्तान के अंदर वो एक barrier होता है, वो present है, like a t-shirt and a hoodie in freaking the United States or even in Dubai, people wouldn't mind paying like an exclusive price for that, even compared to a suit, just because of the way, we've changed our thinking. Pakistan में वो चीज अभी नहीं है. T-shirt and a hoodie is still like, oh, sweatshop से बनी है, हम तो सिर्फ H&M से ही लेंगे, 1000-1200 की लेंगे. So that narrative sort of needs.
Yeah, it's about craftsmanship.
That narrative needs to change, and not only about craftsmanship, also about storytelling.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I think if you create a t-shirt and a hoodie that is around a very important message, and people feel like they need to be a part of the story, you can sell that for a much higher price point without having any craftsmanship involved. It's about how you pique the customer's emotional interest, right? But then again, you have to deal with their consumer habits as well, their barriers. Why do they not want to buy a t-shirt and a hoodie? So it's a very long process. और उसके अंदर price बहुत बड़ा issue है.
100%. Do you see, because I see this in Dubai a lot, and I'm sure that Pakistan is the same, where people value Pakistani items much less, and they would much rather go, and they will like, अगर आप रास्ता की t-shirt London के किसी भी कोने में भी रख देते, people would much rather go buy it from London than they would from a street corner in Pakistan.
100%. So we have this sort of self-depreciating narrative that we consider ourselves as sort of a mere cog within the global supply chain. That Pakistan is just the producers and the suppliers when it comes to fashion.
Yeah.
The funniest thing is, जब पाकिस्तानी बाहर जाता है, सबसे पहले वो Zara के अंदर घुसता है और Zara से चीजें लेता है. Zara यहाँ से जिधर मैं इस वक्त बैठा हूँ, 8 किलोमीटर दूर Zara की फैक्ट्री.
Wow.
8 किलोमीटर दूर ज़ारा की फैक्ट्री, और हमने लंदन जाके ज़ारा की चीजें खरीदनी है फॉर 15-20 हज़ार रुपए। पाकिस्तान के अंदर मैंगो खुल चुका है, एंड अगेन we pay 4,500 5,000 rupees for a mango t-shirt at ये
What?
packages mall. Yeah, packages mall जाएंगे, मैंगो की टी-शर्ट लेंगे, कुछ पता नहीं है कि भाई ये यहीं पे बन रही है. So there's a lot of ingrained unlearning that needs to be done as Pakistanis. And I actually made a tweet about this, that the main job of Rastah isn't to sell a $500 jacket. It isn't to sell a t-shirt or a hoodie. It's to change the way Pakistan is perceived within the global fashion industry. That contemporary and
Yeah.
luxury can come out of Pakistan. The
Dude,
best win would be if brands like Zara Shah Jahan were also being featured by Hypebeast and Vogue, because they should be.
100%. 100%. I mean, the narratives are so strong. The quality of workmanship is so high. It's just, it comes back to that perceived value of Pakistan, right? Like, how do you change the Pakistani
Yeah,
narrative? How do you change
exactly.
people's perceptions of what Pakistan kind of represents, and the quality of work that comes out of there? क्योंकि अगर आप it's a case in point, right? Like, look at Apple, designed in California,
Mm-hmm.
made in China. But if it was just designed in California, designed in China, and made in China, you would not pay $3,000 or over lakh, 2 lakh rupees for a phone.
Yeah, exactly.
It's all
And
about perception.
that shit takes time, man. Sometimes it can take 5-10 years, even more. And if I'm being like very honest and humble, I would say that whatever international press we've gotten, I think that other brands should have gotten it before us.
Yeah.
Zara Shah Jahan ho gaye, you know, Bunto Kazmi, she has a huge international clientele anyway. She doesn't need that press, but these people are doing, so much for Pakistan, but why have they not gotten that international press? I think the answer lies over there, and it's something to do with the fact that they're not catering towards that diaspora audience, which
Yeah.
can get them that international press. But when you look at India, they're getting their, sort of Eastern designers get international press all the time.
But see, what I think that India does really well is, I think India is very good at their storytelling. Like, they have their karigari storytelling, the way that they do their workmanship, like they have that down. Like, they know that they will get 10x the return for opening up in London or anywhere else, and there will be customers.
They're also very proud.
Yeah.
They're also very proud. वो इस तरह के नहीं है कि भाई ओहो हम तो पाकिस्तानी हैं, मतलब
like raw mango को
pat
देखो,
on the
raw
back.
mango is very much Indian, and the prices that they
Yes.
charge are extremely, it's a high price point, but it's beautifully.
Dhruv Kapoor.
Yeah.
Dhruv Kapoor, nor black nor white. You have these brands
No
that
black or
have
white,
that
exactly. That's
international
ridiculous,
recognition. Yeah.
And
So it's interesting to see how the space is developing, to be honest.
do you see more people, like, I'm still very curious, do you see people's perspective changing, like, with the price point that you're launching your stuff at? Are people like are they trying to haggle you, like when you do a pop-up, for instance? Are people like, nahi yaar, tum to mujhe jante ho, like 50% kam do, ye 20% kam do? Like, is that culture still there, or are people like understanding the fact that, okay, dude, this is, work and sweat and tears have been put into this. This is a small drop, and like the value, basically.
Yeah. So when we first started off, that was a problem, but now it isn't as much so. Like I said, when we first started off, our customer base in Pakistan was, I want to say, less than 5%, and then it went up to 10, then like between 15 and 20. So it's going up and up and up and up, and people have started haggling. अब लोग literally cash on delivery के लिए भी message नहीं करते. पाकिस्तान में बैठे they go on the website, they order something, they're like, fuck, we're gonna buy it without having to speak with the owner के discount दो, इस तरह करो. So वो चीज़ आहिस्ता आहिस्ता change हो रही है. And the one thing that I realized is that the most important thing in this space when it comes to changing consumer psychology and perspective is time, patience. Time and patience and being calculated. You can't expect this thing to be done over. It's like going to therapy.
It's compounding, right? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Nice. And so when you, for instance, go to think of a next volume or a next iteration of what you want to do, what are some of the narratives that you try to play on? Is it a continuous story that you're telling? I mean, your overarching theme to chalo samajh aa gayi Rastah ki, but when you do specific drops, what is it that you're trying to tell with each particular volume?
So what I've realized is that essentially I'm not a fashion designer, I'm a storyteller. The underbelly of each collection that I make has a very deep-rooted story and narrative behind it. That might not be the reason why people buy the stuff. Some people don't give a shit about the story, but for me, the narrative and the story is very important. Like the collection about the relationship of truck drivers and truck artists, that was something that I really dove deep into. So with every collection, it's important for me to really try to work around a narrative and tell some sort of a story. And that's what I'm doing for this next little drop as well. Even though it's a very small drop, I'm doing a lot of research for it. I'm reading books, diving into, research articles and whatnot, because I know that's what's important for me. For me, the process is the most important thing. Customer ne sirf end mein product dekhna hai, but what's going to keep me alive is A to Z, not when it gets to Z, right?
Yeah.
So that narrative is something that's tied into each collection, and you're going to see more and more of it. And what you might see with Rastah is that we might start to include very important messaging within our clothes, kind of like how Supreme did. So maybe political elements, maybe not, I don't know. I don't want to get picked up or anything, but that could be something that we do. Hitting on important issues, really diving deep and trying to get people to ask questions. That's very hard to do with fashion, and that's why sometimes I think that maybe a few years down the line I would want to maybe make a film or write a book or something as well, because essentially I'm a storyteller, and if I'm not able to do that with fashion to the best of my ability, I would have to take stock of what I'm doing. So in the future, you guys would probably see more storytelling with Rastah.
It's interesting you say that, because then clothing just becomes a medium for you, right? Like making clothes is just another medium. You could go into film, you could go into something else, you could go into audio, art, whatever.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think Tom Ford said the same thing as well, where he was like, I want to tell stories. I want to tell some sort of a narrative and convey it to people. And that's kind of why he stepped away from fashion for a few years to make the films that he made, because filmmaking allows you the opportunity to just tell more of a holistic story, because people are engaging with the film for the story.
They're immersed in it, yeah.
Not for the product. Fashion is tricky in that sense.
Interesting. So if we go into you personally, what are some of the most vivid memories that you have growing up in Pakistan?
Growing up in Pakistan, तो यार जब मैं बड़ा हो रहा था ना, तो मैं क्रिकेट बहुत ज़्यादा खेलता था. Like निकल जाता था गली के बच्चों के साथ क्रिकेट खेलता था. इसलिए मुझे पंजाबी भी काफी अच्छी आती है. मैं जब भी फैक्ट्री वगैरह के साथ लोगों से बैठा होता हूँ तो मैं पंजाबी में बात कर रहा होता हूँ, and that's something that I think is a strength for me. They can relate to that as well. So I was always very like rebellious, out on the streets playing cricket, खो-खो पे जाके, सलांटी वगैरह लेना इस तरह करके. So I was very just sort of like in the streets in that sense. But at the same time, I was also very, involved in a household that was big, structured, joint family. So you see how joint families in Pakistan structure and function. Eid was a big thing. I think for any Pakistani kid growing up in Pakistan, you could actually make a whole movie or a fucking collection around 3 days of Eid in Pakistan, the drama that ensues across those 3 days. So growing up in Pakistan was very interesting for me. But what I did realize was that when I left Pakistan for university, I don't know why, I tried to put that identity behind me. And that was very interesting, that amongst, Caucasians, I'm sitting there and I'm trying to sort of mold my identity to fit in with what's going on in, let's say, that university in Canada. And that happened for a series of 4 years. I joined a fraternity. I started to become a little whitewashed, if you want to say. And then right at the end of it, before starting Rastah, I was like, okay, no, I have more to offer than just, being molded by someone else. Yeah. And that was just sort of breaking through those chains and that's what Rastah is honestly a product of. So it's been a weird ride with my own relationship with Pakistan.
It's fascinating how you say that, because yeah, so Rasta is basically you kind of trying to learn back or create that story again, and the
Yeah, and in a
relationship.
very rebellious manner. So if you look at Rastah's clothes, you might notice that it's very dystopian, rebellious. Like you have these like really fucked up, distressed elements, and that's what my sort of mind is like.
That's awesome.
Edgy.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So when you describe Pakistan to someone who's never been there, how do
Mhm.
you describe Pakistan?
Um, I would describe Pakistan as just a sea of chaos where there's a shit ton of pearls and everybody's trying to grab them, but nobody can because they're in water. But there's so many pearls. There's just these waves and there's this chaos, but then you have the pearls there. So it's kind of like being stuck in traffic in Lahore. It sucks, but it's also kind of amazing. Chaos, beauty in the chaos, to be honest.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Dude,
yeah.
thank you so much. This has been great.
Hmm.
Learning more
Yeah.
about Rasta, learning more about you. It's been awesome. Thanks, man.